All right, so we are live. And let's see. I made a banner for you.
Sweet. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I think first we'll do a little promo of your death. Oh, hold on.
Oh, here's my
Don't
producer.
want that go. Yeah. Oh, Odie.
Yeah, Odie. He likes to pop up and tell me when it's been a half hour. Like when I'm on a rant talking about the world burning, he pops up after 30 minutes and reminds me, "Hey, you've already been ranting for 30 minutes, Rob." So
Yeah, it's funny. Okay, here we go. So I got the Deth Raider campaign pulled up. Can you see that okay?
yes, yep. Looks good. Cool.
Yeah. And do you want to talk about your book for a minute?
Well, Deth Raider is everybody's favorite Marsoc Marine, is critically injured, loses his legs in the same explosion that kills his team, blows off his legs, embeds alien technology into his brain, and that is how he gains the ability to build out the Deth Raider armor, which is the name of the title. And he needs it to not only for beginning, it's for mobility. Anna, who's the co-star of the book, actually says, if you're so smart now, why are you still pushing yourself around in a wheelchair? So that kind of gives him the incentive to build something to walk in, and he ends up just building the Deth Raider armor because you know how it is. Every good story has to at least have one or two mysteries, and he's got to find out who killed his team, why they killed the team, and who really was behind the whole circumstances where his team dies and he's injured. So he uncovers an alien infiltration on planet Earth by an alien empire called the Raitar. So he just in the adventure or the battle or the action, as you want to put it, that's where it starts, and we just keep going. Once he builds up the Deth Raider armor, he goes from there.
So your aliens, are they going to be like the classic aliens, or do you have are they going to be more humanoid or kind of creaturey?
It's going to be depending on what I want to use in that slot. Now, the main aliens are based on the gods of mythology. So the leader, the queen, which I never show in the first issue, she's Hera. We'll eventually see Zeus. We see Hercules in issue 1, and I've showed lots of pages on Twitter with Hercules doing battle. I wanted to mix sci-fi and this, military action with mythology because I'm a big fan of mythology. And to be honest, I wanted to draw a big muscle guy, so I came up with Hercules. Yeah.
So is it just Greek myths that you're going with, or are you going to mix a little Norse myths too? Or
I'm going to be honest, I will steal from whatever mythology, because the way I'm setting it up is that ancient humans thought they were gods because of their technology. So we're ripping a little bit off of Marvel's Thor type thing, and how they explained Asgardians. I have a setup where the Raitars are using Earth as pretty much a petri dish, as a laboratory. Whether it's for them to make super soldiers or what, and mostly because it's an action story, we're gonna deal mostly with the characters who were the aliens experimented on, to make super soldiers. That's how you get Hercules. It's one of those things where you just go, well, why aren't there a million Hercules running around if Hercules is 10,000 years old? And it's what's the age old? Well, it worked on Hercules, but it didn't work on everybody. It's just like the whole Captain America thing. So,
and then we're back to the. So have you looked into like the Anunnaki too, like that mythology with like ancient aliens?
Yes, I like to watch those YouTube videos. There are certain things that inspire me about the Anunnaki, the mythology behind the Anunnaki. It's pretty cool. I like it. I just don't like the names. Like I
Yeah.
literally would love to do a Gilgamesh book if his name wasn't Gilgamesh. I just that name does not really work for a cool character. Um, and honestly, in this, I can like when I was a teenager was when Jim Lee and all those guys were rocking it and making millions of dollars. We would see promos or Jim Lee in an interview talking about this new project that would come out, which would never
Mhm.
come out. But they didn't have enough artists. They had the money, but they didn't have enough artists to put out all the cool projects they wanted to put out. I don't have enough money, and it's just me, so I don't have the time. But there's so many fun, cool projects I would like to work on and I would like to do. And I actually my now this is being naive about crowdfunding and what Comicsgate was and how many people are in Comicsgate. I really wanted to jump into Comicsgate, and I thought, we'll make a quick 100K off my first book. The first thing I'm going to do is hire another artist, and we're going to get
Mhm.
2 projects rolling, and then just go from there.
Yeah, I saw the one Ninja Bear Hunter that you worked with a team.
That was yes, a hunter ninja bear, and that was Phenom Comics. And my boss, he really, him and his brother write movie scripts. They have
Okay.
medical companies, medical technology companies, but they love movies, and they on their off time will write movie scripts. Well,
That's cool.
I guess after floating movie scripts around in Hollywood for 10, 15 years, you would start to see movies with some of your ideas that they felt were stolen from their movie scripts.
Mm-hmm.
So they thought if they had the comic books version of their movie scripts, it would, that would be something that you could literally just flip through and go, look what they stole, or just it's cement the movie script, because there's always movie scripts. There's 1,000 of them. There's 100,000 of them that float around Hollywood. So that was Hunter Ninja Bear. He came to me. My DC contract was ending, and he said, "Hey, I want to put together." He's like, not necessarily a comic book company, but I want a team to do this project that I movie script I wrote, and it really was. And when I read it, I was like, I only really know one guy that will be like super interested in and will do a great job with it, and that was Chuck Dixon. So I was kind of the art director / comic book guy in that company. I was getting paid a paid rate to be an inker, though. So,
Okay.
I do think people think that the time I worked there, like, I had a salary and I was also an inker, because usually the smart guys, that's the kind of maneuvering they do. They make sure they get a regular paycheck and they'll do, penciling or inking or writing or whatever. I didn't do that. I probably should have. But Hunter Ninja Bear ended up being, it was the 12 issues. It's a big book. It's over 300 pages. So it's a big boy. And the only reason it even went to crowdfunding in the first place is because I told him we should put it on crowdfunding. And he kept telling me, no, he goes, we could do crowdfunding, but I really just want to go through Diamond. And I tried to teach him that Diamond and distribution of comic books in America is your Marvel, you're a DC. If the comic book store has any other budget left, maybe they flip towards the back to see who else they can order from. But usually that just means they're going to order from Dark Horse and Image, and that's it. They're never going to order indie stuff. So I think he still went through Diamond, but he never told me, so I don't think it went that great. I think the big release was through crowdfunding. So
now I did grab this book because I don't know if you know who Fabrizio Aiello is. He did, of course, H. Hoover, but he published this through Amazon, and that might be an option too.
I do plan on having a store on Amazon. Like that will be that's obviously after everybody gets their crowdfunded books, and
Yeah.
I'd rather it be where if I have inventory, that's where I sell inventory through Amazon. But even holding inventory, not only is the space, but can be quite expensive. So we'll
Yeah.
see. It really, it's. I just need to get Deth Raider 1 out, and
Hmm.
like, holy cow! Just dealing with trying to do jumping over to
Printing.
Fund My Comic and having it at the printer, like that type of stuff. Honestly, that is the infuriating part of
Hmm.
being being crowdfunding right now, because there's so many things I've had to deal with in the last month. I haven't touched Deth Raider 2 pages at all, and it's super frustrating. Like, I'm just like, oh, like,
Yeah.
I really wanted Deth Raider 2 probably done by now, but I thought I have to order extra copies to get the print price I wanted. So I better try to sell some of those on Fund My Comic, or I'm going to, I'm going to be living on the street. Now
Hmm.
that's an exaggeration, because my wife and I own this. We pay mortgage on this home, but it was Deth Raider 2, Deth Raider 1 didn't do that fantastic where there's all this extra cash. In fact,
Yeah.
the Deth Raider 1 cash ran out in end of January, February. I think that was even when I was closing out. I said we're gonna try to get an extra 5K off of Deth Raider 1 so I could work on Deth Raider 2. But yeah, that's that. So now I'm doing some freelance work, and
Yeah. You
oh
still have
joy,
distribution too
yeah,
afterwards.
dealing with everything else, and then I honestly know that the most frustrated I'm going to be is when I have to take all this part down to set up for shipping,
Yeah.
because then I won't be able to work at all. Like, my table, all of that will be all packed up just so it'll all be a shipping station. That will be, even if I do any live streams where I'm on, I try to do kinks, I will be pissy, because think about it. At that moment, all you're doing is spending money for
Yeah.
postage,
Hmm.
and I'm not even drawing to move forward with Deth Raider 2. I'm not one of those people who can hide that type of stuff. If it puts me in a pissy grumpy mood, I'm a pissy grumpy bastard.
You wear your emotions on your sleeve.
I do, and it's got me in trouble many times in comic books. So
So I did write out some questions. So we'll start with some going back, way back. Like when you were
uh-oh.
little, what was your first thing that you enjoyed drawing, and when did you start drawing?
Well, I was the kid bored in high school, so I doodled in the margins. But I didn't take art classes. I knew better. I knew I better some kind of math science type person. Ironically, it was in college when I realized I didn't love math enough that I switched back to art. So I didn't even take art in high school. I wish I had. Maybe people would have known Rob Hunter the way they know Rob Liefeld, but I didn't. Comic books were cool and fun, and they were a cool hobby, but I couldn't see myself as an artist in high school. All my friends were, we were all in the science and math classes. So, I wasn't getting A's, but I would get B pluses and stuff. And I thought that would be fine. I realized there was a little bit of a gap there. In high school, you can kind of cheat and sneak. No, I don't mean actually cheat, but you can kind of learn stuff and kind of learn stuff. And as long as you know it for that final exam, you can pass. You'll do decent. Like I had years where I would all year I'd be miserable with, I just couldn't get the homework done. I couldn't figure it out. But we would go over things so much at the end of the year for the final exams that I would end up with like high 80s or low 90s. And my teachers go, "Oh, well, you're just lazy." And I'm like, "No, it just takes me an entire year to learn all this stuff." It doesn't really work out that way in college. You can't. You get thrown so much information. You can't catch up and slowly absorb it and learn it, and then be ready for the final exam. And that's when I realized, well, what else do I like besides math and science? And that was it was art. So then I started taking art classes in college.
And the art classes, was there a particular major for it, or was it just the foundational stuff like life drawing and
Oh,
perspective?
it really was. Hey, I want to be a comic book artist. So let me take drawing classes, and because I had already taken a year of engineering classes, so I had I had taken all my math and science and stuff. So that it really was me just switching over and taking, like, I took economics because I thought economics would be interesting, but it was kind of filling out that AS degree anyways because I was at a community college. So, but it specifically was, it filled in all the humanity gaps that I needed in my degree anyways. And I just, like drawing one, drawing two, like, there's certain classes you can't take, like you can't take painting one until you've taken drawing one, stuff like that. So I just took those classes and whatever else I needed to just kind of fill out a degree. And, but I knew the whole time I wanted to be, at that point, I decided I wanted to be a comic artist. And I was already getting ready to go to Cuber school when I was finishing up my AS
Okay.
with
And
drawing and
then
painting.
was there something that inspired you to go into comics, or was it just from the years of reading comic books up till then?
And literally, I didn't give a shit about anything else. like, oh, being an engineer is not a possibility for me in college. The only other thing I liked besides watching TV was comic books,
Mhm.
and video games. And especially where I lived or where I grew up, it's not like I grew up in Western New York, like dairy
Mhm.
country, where it's just poor people. It's not like there was a big video game company, 30 minutes
Yeah.
away or something. There's, you know, I knew that you could work from home as a comic book artist. I knew that a lot of people worked remote and they would go into the city. And since I lived in New York, I, you know, New York City was like 6.5 hour drive away from where I lived. So
Mhm.
that was actually a possibility where I could see myself driving into New York City to show my stuff around to the editors. So that was the only other that was the only other possibility for me in comic books, because like I looked around and it's like the joke was where I lived, you either become a cop, a nurse, a school teacher, or somebody so you could work for the state and hold a shovel. So you'd be one of those guys holding the shovel when they drive by the highways. That's it. Like those are the only like stable jobs that you knew that you would make a decent living in. And one of my sisters, she became a teacher, and the other one got into nursing. And my mom was a nurse, so I knew I didn't want any of those. I didn't want to do any of those four choices. So it was kind of like, I love comic books. Let's be a comic book artist. And people were like, "Are you retarded? Just because you like this, because it's a hobby, doesn't mean you just be like, don't you want to just finish out your degree and go from there?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, I can't do what I wanted to. So the only other thing I like is I'll be a comic book artist. That's what I
And
did.
so, uh, was your first convention as a fan or as a professional?
Oh, my stepfather, where I lived in New York, Ithaca, which if people know what the city of Ithaca is because Cornell is at the top of the hill, so it's a famous college. But Roger Stern lived in Ithaca, so he was part of a big Ithaca comic book community in Ithaca. And Ithaca is like an hour and a half from where I lived. And my stepfather took us to our first comic book convention. And actually, John Byrne was there signing comics and stuff. And when you're a kid and it's the first comic book convention you've ever went to, you just kind of walk by the table and see John Byrne being nice or being a little snippy to people. So you're afraid to even talk to him. But we loved comic books. So we didn't even talk to the guests. We were just going through all the back issues. Like, we've never seen so many comic books in our life. My brother and I were so excited. So it was definitely, as a fan, I went to comic books conventions for years before I actually sat behind the table. And one of my first which was very cool, was I got to attend Ithaca, one of their conventions, as a guest and not just as a fan, which was a lot of fun.
Nice. And then, what was your first job in comics?
My first, like when I kind of hit that, like, my first gig at Marvel, I helped out on X-Man. I don't know if you ever saw X-Man, but Steve Strouse was doing the pencils, and X-Man, because comic books were still booming at the time, the main inker would have so much work that, if Steve got a little tight on the deadline at the end, they would give up a couple of pages here and there. So that's how I got my foot in the door. And ironically, back then, when you were showing your portfolio around Marvel, you had to make sure, don't knock. If a door's closed, that means the editor's in a meeting. Don't knock on the door. I did not know that rule. So I knocked on a door, and the editor's like looking at me like, what are you doing? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, oh, I'm just handing my samples off. Well, even though I made her mad and it was a mistake, she was leaving. She was going to work for MTV. So when all of a sudden they needed 3 pages inked on X-Men, they're like, oh, here's this guy trying to beat Tim Townsend, and he's going to be cheap because he's brand new. Why not? Why do we care? Like, she's literally like, why would I care? I'm going to be working at MTV next week. So that was how I got my foot in the door at Marvel.
Nice.
Which,
and then,
now you can't even walk the floors of Marvel. You can't even get in there. So
you went to the Kubrick school for comics. Was it then that you realized that you wanted to be an inker, or were you under?
No, it was yes. Because my classes, we had 10 classes. So you had 2 classes every day. And luckily for me, 2 of those classes were actually comic book related. Now, technically, like the layout class, which was a lot about commercial art, you learned a lot about layout, which obviously is it's going to help you with your comic book panels and your splashes and all that kind of stuff. It's art is art. I never, ever thought about storytelling. So as a penciler, I was just trying to draw like Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and guys like that. Not once did I ever think about leading the eye around the panel. None of that. Like, I had to learn all that stuff fresh. And I would look at someone who drew like shit, someone who in my class, literally it wasn't much better than stick figures, but they would get a better grade in my comic book classes. And I'm like, why are they getting a better grade than me? And I'd be like, well, Rob, because they're thinking about storytelling. Like, this guy's actually a good storyteller. He's just a really shitty artist. So that kind of, and the who I roomed with, one guy wanted to be an animator, so that he didn't influence me at all. But the other 2 guys, 2 Daves, one was, we called him Swiss Dave, even though he was from Sweden, and the other was Bandana Dave, and he was from Maine. This was how he learned comic books. For 6 months while he was unemployed, he drew X-Men #1. He would just look at the figures and just draw them over and over again until he could pull them out of his head. Now, he still had problems with his anatomy, but when he walked in the first year, he was the best superhero artist. So between those 2 guys, and because Swiss Dave actually had been doing comic books in Europe, so he was way more experienced. He was a professional comic book artist already. I knew, I'm like, oh my God, there's no way I could compete with either one of these guys. But because of my painting class, at least I could hold a brush. Like, other guys are like, what am I, they couldn't even, they didn't even have an idea of how to hold a brush or how to manipulate a brush to make nice thin to thick brush lines. At least I was on that path. So I thought if all I really cared about was the artwork, anyways, then finishing the artwork in ink, that suits me. So that's when I spent more and more time inking as I was in Cuber school. And I completed the first year, and that was it. I kind of, Cuber school is expensive. And not only is it expensive, the first year, they set you up with their housing and you pay them for it. But second and third year, they're like, well, you've already lived there a year. You could figure out how to find housing on your own. I knew that the housing was going to be really expensive. And I had actually saved while I was in college because I had scholarships. Not a lot, but still they helped. While I was still in college, was saving for the Cuber school. So to go back for a second year, there's no way I was going to be able to afford it. And I felt like I kind of learned, like, the two biggest things I learned when I was at the Cuber school was I suck, and I really suck. But here's all these books you could read to learn to get better. Like, the teachers did their best to show you how bad you were and how you would get better. Like, they kept telling some guys who were frustrated with how their art wasn't improving over the year because they were, you had to do so much homework that you really didn't have time to really work on your comic book stuff. They would say, wait till you come back next year. When you have all summer to draw, you will realize how much you actually learned at the school. And I kind of felt like, then why don't I just extend my summer? Why don't I just keep working on it, until I break into comic books? And that's what I did. I treated it like a job, and I would get up at like 9 a.m. and I would just draw until I went to bed. And I told my parents, I go, like, if you guys think this is cool, I don't have plans to going back to Cuber school for a second year. I'm going to just get up. And that's what I would do. I would draw for like 5 or 6 weeks. It's a good time to do ink samples. I would do ink samples. I would mail them out, and then I'd go back to drawing. And then, depending on if I got any response, which I didn't get any response for like a year, but you get maybe a letter or two saying, hey, Rob, we like what direction you're going in on these ink samples, but maybe you need to do this, or maybe you need to do that. So, and that's what I did until I finally broke in.
So, what was your first tangle with storytelling? When did you start getting into the storytelling of the art? Was it with Deth Raider, or was there other pieces?
Well, I started, just working in comic books for 20 years. I started paying attention more. You read the books you're supposed to read. Like Eisner's storytelling, his book on storytelling. So I just eventually, over my career, I just finally read the books that explain storytelling. And, and also when I was at CrossGen, Bart Sears would explain things to us sometimes. And Bart is a superstar when it comes to storytelling in comics. So, and even just the 2.5 years I was at CrossGen, being able to work with a bunch of amazing artists and writers and colorists, you kind of, you absorb stuff. They will bring up things that you never even occurred to you. At least that's how it was for me. Like, I'm like, I never even thought about that. So then you just put it in, notes into the brain of, that's a great idea, or that's, oh yeah, okay, I get it, I understand that. Like, and just working relationships, like Mel Ruby. We were at a convention, and I worked with Mel on Excalibur, and he was like, he goes, honestly, he goes, one of the beauties about comic books is, he goes, fans will let you get better. He goes, you don't have to be Jim Lee from day one. He goes, Jim Lee wasn't Jim Lee from day one. He goes, fans and editors, if you show progress, they will stick with you if there's something that they see in your work. And he goes, faces and hands. He goes, if you can get those down, you can cheat everything else. He goes, if you're having trouble with a forearm, He goes, well, then you just stick the hand out. Like he goes, just get really good at foreshortening, and just really when you foreshorten, make sure the hand is, you do a great job with the hand and you do a great job with the expressions. And he goes, and you'll go a long way just focusing on those two things. And you'll even see that a lot of female artists, when they break into comics, they usually, you can tell because they don't like to do the detail, but the hands are great and the faces and the eyes are perfect. And most female artists are always like, you look at it and go, well, could use more detail, but hands and faces are perfect. Because I think women more than anybody really look at people's hands for expression, and they look at faces when we talk. We all talk to each other. So, and Mel was right about that. So it was always little notes that people told me over my career. And then when I was at DC and things were starting, DC was starting to replace more and more inkers with foreign inkers. And I got the option to, and I actually turned it down at first, was to do finishes on, now I'm blanking, Suicide Squad. I guess everybody else had turned it down because they didn't want to pay. They let's see. I don't want to blank on the penciler's name. All right, I can't remember the penciler's name, but he wasn't doing full. He was doing like layouts, and the editor didn't want to pay an inker to do finishes. Well, a few inkers who helped out on the book said, "Hey, you have to pay us more than inks if you want this book to look decent." This is what the penciler is doing. The inker needs to be paid to finish it. So I actually, when I started working on Suicide Squad, I think the penciler was actually doing roughs. I actually got a pencil rate and I got an ink rate. And that was probably, from a creative standpoint, was the most fun I had had at DC for a few years at that point, because it was, the projects were getting, because when I first started working at DC, I mean, one of the first big projects I got to work with was with Ron Lim and Jim Starlin, who are both two of my heroes in comic books. So I'm like, oh no, I was a little worried, like, oh, it's not going to get any better than this. I'm like, and they're both like loved what I was doing with the inks. I got to ink Jim on some Strange Adventure stuff, and but I knew Ron had actually had in his contract with Marvel, he had already promised Jim he was going to do that Rand Thanagar Holy War. So Ron already knew he was leaving. So DC really liked what I had done over Ron. So they kept me busy, and they kept putting me on cooler and cooler stuff. The thing is, when you work for a comic book company, unless the projects you get on are hotter and hotter and hotter, you go all the way to the top, and then you start going down to then there's a steady decline, and most people try to figure out some kind of handhold to stay. Well, I kept everyone I worked with, all the pencilers I worked with would leave. Like when I worked with Mark Bagley, as soon as his contract was up at DC, he left and he went right back to Marvel. Ed Bennis was starting to become burned out at that time, so I tried to hold on to Ed Bennis and work with him. But there's a problem. It's not always the best career decision to work with somebody who's bad with deadlines, because then you can be associated with bad with deadlines guy. Or are you like, if I could have saved Ed's deadline every time, they would have loved it. But if Ed needs 5 extra days to finish it, I'm going to at least need a couple of 2 extra days. I'm not going to be able to I'm not going to be exactly right behind him because of his intense pencils. So I don't think that helped me. So the cool projects got less and less cool and less cool. And then they offered me Suicide Squad, which I honestly, every issue that I finished, I would always wait for the editor to fire me, because I would see the things I did well and the things that I did awful. Mm-hmm. And I think every issue he waited for me to quit, because he's got to be thinking, Rob is working twice as hard, but his pencil rate, because there's someone doing roughs, his pencil rate is less than his ink rate. he could literally be inking two pages for the more money than the work he's doing on Suicide Squad, and he could probably do it faster. So he probably is going. He's probably thinking, well, Rob's gonna, he's gonna finally bow out because it's too much work for not enough money. And I kept thinking, oh, he's gonna just see, he's gonna be like, whoa, that face really sucks, Rob. We can't have you on the next issue. So I cling to that book as long as I could, because from a creative standpoint, I loved it. From a paycheck standpoint, it was terrible. Now, the thing is, because everybody in comic books, you'll get that you got lucky, right place at the right time. What I was working on that Suicide book was when they were making the movie. Okay. So when the trade paperback came out, I ended up getting a pretty cool check. Like, it was the biggest royalty check I had ever received up to that point in my career. Now, it wasn't like it wasn't even 5 figures, but it was still like, oh, look at all that money. Look at all that money I didn't expect. I thought maybe I'd get a couple grand, and I got more than a couple grand. So that was pretty cool. But it also, that kind of ignited my creative, like, I needed more than just being an inker. Mm-hmm. And I also, that was probably where it told me, being an inker is a dead end. There's an end to this career. You see the dead end sign, you see that there's still some more road ahead, but Rob, you're not going to be able to keep making the same living that you made. And I was only making, like, my average was like 40 to 50,000 a year. So it's not like I was making 120,000 or more a year. So I could be like, well, when inking is over, I could just retire. I was making enough to live decently, where I lived in Florida, as a single guy, so.
You froze for a second.
I'm sorry, what?
You froze for a second.
Oh, am I back?
Yes.
Okay.
It was right when you were saying you were making enough for a single guy.
Yeah. You're living in Florida with a 1-bedroom apartment, it's not like I was driving a brand new car or anything, but it was decent money. But I knew that wouldn't last, and I didn't make enough to where I could just retire when inking was over. So I realized that, so I would work on my downtime. I would work more on my pencils.
Okay. And when you were working on your pencils, did you have a story in mind for it, or was it just practicing sketching? And
oh yeah, no. In fact, Deth Raider came about because I did 2 projects for Phenom, and when both those projects were ending, I pitched Raider to my boss, and all it was a half-finished drawing of Deth Raider, like the things I wanted to see in the character, with a pitch that went along with it. And I didn't even finish the designs because I didn't want to draw. I thought I would ink it and Mel Ruby would pencil it. And I'm thinking, well, Mel's going to want to put in his own influences in this character. And besides, there's design elements I wasn't sure, like the big harness that I ended up adding to Deth Raider is like his power source and stuff. I didn't have that finished off. I just knew that I wanted it to be like some kind of grenade launcher. Batman and his utility belt. Like every 10 years they'll do that where they explain what's in his utility belt. Mm-hmm. And I always thought it was cool that, he had mini grenades, he had smoke bombs, all this different stuff. So I wanted to kind of incorporate that into Deth Raider, and I wanted it to be kind of a launcher so he could use it a lot while he fought, which is ironic because then when I came up with the plasma blades, I almost never used the launcher in the first issue. I do plan on using the launcher more, but it just hasn't worked out that way. But the boss said no to Raider, which, I mean, it was a half-finished drawing anyway, so, but that's when the whole time I was working at Phenom, my buddy Andy Smith was telling me about, you might want to look into crowdfunding. You come out here. He goes, you need to, you can be kind of funny. He goes, you should try to do YouTube. You need to do all this stuff. He goes, the way the comic book market's shrinking and jobs are getting harder to find, you might want to think about doing your own thing. And I got to the point where Phenom was over. I was working on my art, and I just kind of looked over at the half finished Raider drawing. And I went to my wife and I says, well, I go, if you type in Raider, the first three things that come up when you type in Raider on Google is Tomb Raider.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's all the football. It's the Raiders football team. I go, so I need something in front of it. I need, something to kick it up. And she mentioned a few different things. And then she said, what about like Death? And then when I Googled Deth Raider, I found out on YouTube, there was a guy he goes by the logo Deth Raider. He's a gamer. So I had to shorten it from DEATH to DETH. And that's how I got Deth Raider. And then I just kind of, as I worked on my artwork, I tried to work around a story with that. So.
And do you see Deth Raider being a long story, ongoing, or do you have a finite ending to it?
Just the nature of his character, I could kill him off easily. I could do 3 issues and be done. I'm still looking at that, finding my groove. Like, mm-hmm. I think, especially it really depends on how well Deth Raider 2, like I've set up Deth Raider 2 to be only black and white, and it doesn't have to make a ton, but it needs to make, probably roughly 20K. If it can make 20K and it doesn't take me too long to finish off the pages, then I can draw it, ship it, work on the next issue. And just kind of get into a groove. I still haven't found that groove of like, maybe I only do an hour of YouTube a week, and I do 1 hour. That's it. I work on my stuff. I pop my head like a groundhog once a week, do Kings or do like an hour video of my own, and then go get back to work. And that's really what I want to be able to do, because I want to be able to produce like 3 to 4 projects a year. I don't want it like this. Everybody with doing the 1 project a year, if you don't sell 100K in books, you aren't making a living.
Yeah,
with one. Yeah, it doesn't work. The numbers do not work out between printing and shipping, and especially if you're doing a lot of guys doing a lot of YouTube, where they don't call. I had a color Deth Raider myself. Well, they're literally just doing pencils and inks. I mean, you know how much money, even now at Marvel and DC, they would pay for pencils and inks if you were doing both, and you would have the artwork to sell.
Isn't it like less than minimum wage? That's what I heard. Sure
if you, well, it isn't. It isn't. Now the thing is would Marvel and DC even hire us again to do pencils and inks? I don't know, because they really have gotten really good at hiring foreign talent for half of what they were paying us. Most guys would not go back to Marvel and DC, because Marvel and DC will not pay them what they were making 3 years ago. But my rate wasn't that great 3 years ago anyways. So would they pay me? I don't know. I do know that I can't do as much YouTube as the other guys are doing. And still, to make a living, I do need to, I'd rather be hey, Deth Raider, 20K, 25K. Yeah, I'd rather keep it small and tight and, pop up, hey, everybody, once a week, and kind of, that is not the YouTube way. The YouTube way is to, a lot of this crowdfunding is, you crush people with all the YouTube you do, and then hopefully they back your book and they back it to a really big fat amount, and then you could give them all the YouTube they want, and then on the sidelines you get your book done. I can't do that. There's no way. I like the process of working on the comic book way too much, and I'd rather take less money and do more books than do more YouTube to work on just one book. So it's the one thing I've learned over this 2 years to do Deth Raider is I don't. I want to do more pages, not less pages.
Yeah. And like creating content and stuff, it takes time. I was gonna say,
No,
yeah,
it's true. It's well. Think about it. Think about it from a standpoint of you do. Uh, if you're the guy who does lots and lots of YouTube and you do one book a year, and even if it pays you enough to be able to do that every year, where that it does, you're making a living on that. In 5 years, you have 5 books, and you have 5 years of YouTube. No one's going to watch again. You know, but if you're on my model and you do 3 books a year, you have 15 projects that you can resell over and over again. You know, through Amazon or re-crowdfund or put in hardcovers. Like it doesn't. If since YouTube doesn't pay, putting so much time into YouTube, even though it is marketing, I would rather take less money and less YouTube because in the end, it's the comic books that will end up paying. That it's the comic books that pay the bills, and the comic books that would pay the bills long after I stop YouTubing. So that's how I
I
see
got
it.
a comment from Headless Bourgeoisie.
Oh, very cool. See, dude, honestly, once I get that groove set up, I want to do 3 or 4 books. You know, I really would be like, I was lucky enough that Ethan let me on the Kings.
Mhm.
But at the same time, people are like, well, you can't just do Kings. You got to do your own videos too. So all of a sudden that I want to do 1 hour a week. Well, Kings could be 2 to 3 hours. And then I got to
Mhm.
do my own videos. So all of a sudden you're like, the commitment quickly goes from 1 hour to 10 hours. And I'm not a multitasker. 10 hours really kind of fucks me up. So if I can get closer to that 1 hour, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I get closer to that 1 hour and I'm just at the table the whole effing time, then it that's it. There's 4 books, the 4 books a year, you know. And I honestly, what's kind of funny is when I originally launched Deth Raider, because I saw that there's a gap, you know, there's that year gap between when people crowdfund it and when it finally comes out. I wanted to set it up, but I couldn't hit the stretch goal. Honestly, I didn't hit any of my stretch goals on Deth Raider. I changed the stretch goals just so that people could get some trading cards because not
Mhm.
one of my stretch goals actually we hit. Um, one of the big stretch goals was I wanted to release Deth Raider 10 pages at a time digitally to everyone. Once you buy the book, you get the digital for free. And that way, um, they would get like I think I wanted to set it up so they'd get 10 pages a month, which isn't 20, but it's still 10 pages a month. And then when the book is finished, it ships and they get the book. And I wanted to do it that way so that you know, you could follow the story and it wasn't so you didn't see anything. You know, I thought that would be a fun way of because either crowdfunding you wait a year or more, or comic book stores you get your book once a month, and I thought that would be a fun like bridge the gap. But to do that means you need a color, so you need a letter, you know, that you're paying. And when Deth Raider didn't do the numbers it needed to do, I was like, well, that's the first thing that's the first idea that just got thrown in the garbage. I still think there's when it comes to digitally, we talk about this on pontificators all the time.
Mhm.
Um, Marvel and DC should have switched to digital 2 years ago. When COVID
Yeah.
hit, they should have said, okay, we see the business is from here on out, the business is going to crumble. Like literally, you're watching the skyscraper slowly implode on itself. Um, they have Disney Plus and DC has Max. All the comic books digitally for free on those channels. I mean, think of your audience.
Yeah.
And then you sell the trade paperbacks and you sell the hardcovers. And with smart TVs now, you literally could the kid could they're watching reading the comic book on a big screen TV, so they're getting the artwork bigger than ever. And then at the bottom, did you like this book? You can buy the hardcover, or here's all the different hardcovers, or here's the toys. It really is no shit. Why aren't you doing it? But nobody's doing it. it's like they won't take that leap.
Oh,
You know?
one thing that maybe, I know if you're short on cash, maybe bartering skills. So like you ink something for someone and then they color your thing. Exchange of skills.
A
That'd
buddy
be
of mine, I inked his Brett Booth pinup years ago, and he still owes me. You know, he's going to color something for me. He was supposed to color the Anna cover, which
okay.
so the bartering thing doesn't. Unless it's something that someone you work with all the time, the bartering thing doesn't. It's because, you know, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, okay, cool. It's another when someone has a bunch of paying work in front of them and they're supposed to work on this thing for free because you did something for free for them 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It doesn't work out. I've learned that you get to work back a lot faster if you pay somebody. That's why some of the covers I had a paid colorist on them. And Deth Raider 2 is going to be black and white. It has to hit a stretch goal, I think, of 35K. And then there'll be a color version that's offered.
Okay.
That's the way I could see that, because if Deth Raider 2 got to 35K, then I immediately just hire a colorist to say, well, here's all the pages. And it'll be 48 page. It'll be a 48-page book. So, which is funny. I'm talking about Deth Raider. See, I'm so excited about projects. And so Deth Raider 1 is on Fund My Comic right now, and I hope people will take a look at it. I had a blast doing it. It's at the printer. I need to bug the printer because I think
the link is below to the video.
Yes. I think this week is supposed to go onto the schedule so I can bug them and find out from my buddy when's it actually going to get printed. He was actually giving me extra time to sell more copies, just in case I wanted to adjust any of the print sales.
And are you gonna also sell like the dinged and dented ones if there's any like damage?
Yeah, eventually I could do that. That would probably, that sounds like a smart idea, selling that in the Deth Raider 2 campaign. We will see. Actually at this point I'm a little bummed because of all this stuff going on. It's Deth Raider 2. The artwork hasn't progressed as much as every time I think about Deth Raider 2, I'm always like, you know, I should, because dude, really quickly, like,
Do you want to show?
By December, I had 40 pages of pencil and marker already done. But the inks have taken slow because I've had to deal with all the business side of the printing and all that other stuff that, you know, I think I'm halfway through those 40 pages, but I think when I'm looking at today's February 11th, I expected the whole thing to be done
March.
Exactly. Now, could I, in a hard push, finish it? Only if Fund My Comic does a lot better.
Yeah.
Because if Fund My Comic does where it's at now, then I'm doing freelance work to pay the bills, because the Deth Raider 1 money ran out end of December.
Do you want to show a page of your markers and pencils?
Oh no, I don't show that. One, because they honestly, I've tried to. You can barely see anything with the camera. I mean, I actually was doing I did a Venom sketch
I remember
thing, and you couldn't see the pencils at all
until you turned off the lights.
Yeah, like then I'm like slowly getting a headache, and I'm like, you still really barely, like, I had to switch to a marker. I switched to a marker and was doing it freehand because I'm like, damn, I can't see it all. How are these guys doing that? I'm thinking they're using a better camera. I just bought, like, oh, that's a decent price, you know,
like,
handheld.
Could you see that?
I can see that.
Yeah. It might be lighting too.
Well, it's also my camera. The camera that's sitting like this, so it gets the down shot. That's not the web camera, and I think the web camera it's more up to date software and technology. The camera that I have on a tripod to shoot down, that, that might have been like cutting edge like 5 years ago. I bought it off of Amazon for like $150 or something,
Yeah.
a little digital camera, and it's just not designed to do anything that our web cameras can do. So
True. Yeah, I don't even have one of those cameras yet. I need to get one, but I also need the space to set it up.
oh, it's I had the tripod with the camera sitting on my table, which has the desktop and 2 monitors. So literally I kept bumping it with my hand as I'm drawing, and one leg is across the keyboard, and I positioned it so that you couldn't actually see the tripod legs in the view. But I was just like, there's got to be a better way than this, because this just looks, what a half-ass put together, just to try to show off a sketch. And then when I looked up as I was drawing and realized nobody could see the pencils anyways, and I'm just like, now I could always, if I could switch to a darker pencil, but then if I switch to a darker pencil, the whole thing turns into a bigger mess.
Yeah.
Because when you switch to a darker pencil, usually what you do as an artist is you go over it with a kneaded eraser, and then you would ink it, or you would do the marker, because now the pencil lead is so thick that the marker or the ink won't stick to the paper. So, or I get off my ass, and when I actually have cash again, I buy a better camera. But buy a better camera to spend more time on YouTube, or use that money to work on more Deth Raider pages. And that is that I still don't know exactly what's the right answer yet. And I've been here for 3 years, and I still don't know what the right answer is for that stuff.
Do you think maybe doing kind of like Rainy's doing, where she's inking pages while she's filming it? That way you get work done and content for YouTube?
Well, she's doing it online.
Yeah.
Right? Like she's like, I mean, not online, but she does it digitally. She inks her stuff digitally.
There's been a few videos where she's inking traditionally.
Oh, okay. I don't have enough workspace. That's why when I did the Venom sketch, it was only on 8.5 by 11 photocopy paper.
Yeah.
I couldn't actually put a page on this table and try to ink on this page. There's no way. I would actually have to, and I wanted originally to do a setup where I'm over at the table and the camera is, filming down, so I can work at the table like normally. I do have to get a bigger cord to do that, but also you won't be able to see anything I'm doing. Yeah. Like, you would be able to see the ink lines I put down, but the marker, because it's pencil and then it's marker, sometimes I'm this far away from the paper to see that some of the details of the pencil that I'm following, because the marker, as I've gotten faster, the marker is almost, when you see the famous painters and how they'll paint, and when you look at it closely, it doesn't really look like anything, and you have to pull back before then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it's a crowd of people. With the marker stuff, it's mostly now it's gradations and textures. It doesn't look like anything until I've done the inks to it. So you would literally, if I filmed it, you would be like, oh, look at him. He's working on a gray blob. And then all of a sudden you'd see me rendering, I'm inking. Oh, look, now it's an arm shows up. Yeah. Oh, look, it's a Deth Raider arm shows up. Like it, I don't think it would, it would translate even worse than the Venom sketch did. So it's why I haven't done that yet. Maybe for sense. Maybe for my just the commissions that I've taken on. Like there's a commission that I'm working on right now that is Ed Bennis, Spider-Man, and Hulk. Now that would be really cool to show inking to that. But once again, I'd have to have the camera set up and it's also in blue. So blue does show up better on the camera. Then I would just have to have the table set up, but that, like I said, then I have to find the right cord. Yeah, like this camera's a little old. It's not even a USB-C cord input. It's that the big one. The big one from 10 years ago, that USB, because there's like 8 different versions of USB, which is
I don't think I ever remember that one, but
it's really frustrating when you're trying to order a cord on Amazon and you're like, wait, it kind of looks like that, but it also kind of looks like that. So,
and then the letters and stuff are so tiny on it sometimes that you need like glasses for your glasses to see it.
mm-hmm. I've actually taken my camera with some instructions that are so small, and I'm putting my camera and I'm zooming in and looking at it while I'm looking at my glasses, trying to go, what the f? You notice that some of the on some software, the passwords,
Mm-hmm.
like your authentication key, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't, it's so goddamn small, I can't see it with my glasses on. And I'm like, I gotta zoom in on an authentication key with my phone just to be able to read it. What the f?
So, I have another question. So did you go from X-Men from Marvel to Malibu, or was there more Marvel work before you went to Malibu?
I did one issue for Malibu, that one fill-in issue. I don't remember when I did that. The Marvel stuff, it's easier to just group that all together. In the beginning, I worked like maybe 3 months out of the year for the first year at Marvel. And then the second year, I worked I think by the second year at Marvel, I was working pretty much full time. And I remember looking at the difference in what I made those 2 years. And I'm like, I'd rather go back to working just the 3 months out of the year, because that was when there were still some royalty checks. So my page rate was only like $80 a page that first year I worked at Marvel, but I would make like $110 a page in royalties. So it was like getting paid twice. And I remember going, wait a minute, if I only work 3 months out of the year and I make 19K, and I work all year and I make 24K, I'm like, I want to go back to working just 3 months of the year. But that's the nature of the business as sales kept dropping. I think by the third year, I think I was making like 27,000 a year, which most people are like, but that's like 1990, 95, 96, and 97.
Yeah.
And at some point in there, I did that one issue for Malibu. That probably was early on though. That was probably during that first year I worked at Marvel, because it really was like I would just randomly get a phone call. Hey Rob, do you want to help out on X-Men again? The big work that year was I helped out and did half of an issue of X-Men. So that was the big deal for me that year. It was like, holy cow, I get to work on it was like 8 or 10 pages or something like that.
And which title did you work on at Malibu?
I did a fill-in issue of the Freaks. I think it was Freaks. I think it was Freaks. But see, it's kind of crazy. Some of the stuff. I actually look at some of the books. People will bring me the books I've worked on over the years, and I don't recognize them at first. I'm like, I worked on this. Plus, a lot of us were doing the same type of bouncy ink line. So I'll look at something and go, did I ink this or did someone else ink? Like I can't even remember. Like some pages look like, especially an issue where I just helped out on. Some pages I remember. Other pages I go, I don't know if I inked this or if someone else inked that. It does become kind of a blur. Becomes a blur.
So you worked at CrossGen. So that was a longer stint? And did you work on more titles, or was there a particular title you worked on there?
What I did was I was at Marvel, and my last book at Marvel was Iron Man, and I worked on Iron Man for a year. The first 6 months was with Sean Chen, and he was the big star, so that was fantastic. I knew I was in trouble when I had one conversation with Bobby Chase the whole time I was with Sean. So for 6 months, she called me once. She called me twice in 1 week when I started working with the new penciler, and I'm like, there was safety working with Sean and working with a new penciler. They're trying to mold into a certain direction. I'm like, I'm not so safe anymore. And I went, after Iron Man, I went to CrossGen, and CrossGen was I moved down to Florida in like May of 2001, and I was done with CrossGen like a little more than 2 years. I lasted 2 years at CrossGen, and that was because CrossGen started having trouble paying people. And I love what I do. I love working in comic books, but I'm not doing it for free.
Mhm.
I don't honestly, I don't do anything for free. Not if I even, especially nowadays, like, but now as of today, like, cause I'm like 53. Um, if I'm not getting paid to do something, I'd rather just hang out with my wife and my cats or whatever hobbies I have. So, hey, Marcus, what's up? Um, so when Crossians they actually call you into the office and ask you, do you need your check this week? And I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
yeah, did I win the lotto and not realize it? Of course I need my fucking check. What do you mean? Do you need your check? Because I know I need my check. And then they had this attitude like, well, we're paying you so well. And I'm like, no, you're paying some of the other guys really well. You're paying me like the low as little as you can. They had this attitude, well, the single guys don't need as much money. You're like, I still have to pay up for an apartment all by myself. I still have a car payment. I still like that was their attitude. Well, if you have a family, you'll get paid more because, responsibilities. And I'm like, a family, motherfucker. I grew up where both mom and dad worked. So don't give me this shit where you think Crushing can support just dad's working and mom can stay home with the kids. That's not the economy most of us live in. So when you're going to pay him more because he has kids because you assume that the wife isn't working, dude, especially nowadays, usually the wife makes a lot more money than the guy. They're better at maneuvering, I think. So I did CrossGen for a little, like maybe 2.5 years. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. CrossGen just needed one. It needed more time because it did have a lot of great ideas, and even like the comic books online and all that type of stuff. CrossGen needed $100 million is what they needed. They needed to not be profitable and just keep creating their properties. Really. When they came into the market, how they came into the market, Chuck Dixon's, he has a lot of insight in this. And Chuck said that CrossGen's biggest problem was they wouldn't cancel books. Instead of canceling, like, hey, this book is not selling, we'll cancel this book. We'll put this team on a new book that this writer came in and has a new idea for. Because honestly, the first 4 ideas that launched CrossGen also killed CrossGen. Those ideas were horrific. All the good ideas came from Chuck Dixon, Tony Bedard, like all the guys. The second and third wave of books were a lot better than the first wave of books. So, unfortunately, it kind of sunk the company.
Yeah. Was that when you met Aaron and Gary and some of the other kings?
Yeah, because we all worked at CrossGen together. So Andy actually we had cubicles. Andy sat behind me in his cubicle. But our cubicles were like, I was in a corner. I was cornered and Andy was like this. So we weren't like actually back to back with our chairs, but we're like 90 degrees from each other. So we would sit and talk all day while we were working on comics. But Aaron Lepresti worked there. So Aaron would go to lunch with us a bunch of times. Aaron would always yell at me because at that time I had a Mustang, and Aaron's a tall dude. He's like 6'2". So, and because he's taller than Andy, we'd have to put Aaron in the front seat next to me, and the seat would be all the way back, and Aaron's legs would still be touching the dashboard, the glove compartment, and he'd always go, "If we get in a car accident, you're breaking my legs immediately. Don't be safe. Be safe." So, yeah, Chuck said the SIG was the issue.
So it looked like a clown car when he got out.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. But yeah, so we would go to lunch together. Jeff Johnson would be there too a lot of the times because Jeff was in my quad. It was Andy, myself, Andrea DeVito, Jeff Johnson, and Micah Tia. And Andrea didn't go to lunch with us very often, but a lot of times it'd be Jeff, Andy, myself, maybe Micah Tia. We would go to lunch and hang out. So that's why you'll see some of that cross-gen banter or whatever when we're doing doing different live streams where it is a little bit easier to talk to guys like Andy and Alo because I've known him for years. And I call Andy up all the time. I'm always asking him for advice with live streaming and crowdfunding and stuff. So
How did you end up on Pontificators with Art Bear and the other guys?
I think I sent an email to Art asking if I could be on a show. And we did a one-on-one interview talking about my career and stuff. I asked if Andy, in what way, Marcus, because I'm kind of two different people. So I'm manic always, but it's yeah, so I did a one-on-one interview with Art, and Art and I, Art and I have the same philosophy when it comes to, when people say it's just business, it's not personal.
Yeah.
But the thing is it doesn't get more personal than business because that's how we pay our bills. Like if someone fucks you over for money, you're like, bro, that's. That immediately relates to my lifestyle, my life. That's how I buy groceries. That's how I pay the bills. So, and Art and I both, we come from that same viewpoint. Like, dude, business is the most personal like it can be. When people say it's business, it's not personal. That might relate to people with millions of dollars. Because then it's just a bottom line. It's about maybe expanding your company or whatever. But in comic books, most people aren't making millions of dollars. So business is very, very personal. It means whether you're worried about paying the mortgage next month. So
it's also a way to try to soften the fact that they're being a bad person by stabbing someone in the back.
It is. They're rationalize it. They're trying to rationalize that they're effing someone over. Yeah.
Owning up to it and saying like, well, this move will only benefit me in the long run. It's not going to benefit the other person.
Yeah, exactly. And I've we used to see that all the time at CrossGen too. Certain people, and it would always be like, oh, dude, you're doing it again. Like you're gonna get a bad, So
yeah,
I'm not gonna say specifically who they were, but there were some creators at CrossGen that you're just like, oh, dude, you quickly understand why, as a penciler, they work with lots of different inkers and that type of thing. You burn it when you burn through inkers a lot. And honestly, this is for you can look at any penciler's career. If they burn through a lot of inkers, they're probably a jerk. Because you look at Jim Lee. Jim Lee's worked with the same guy, Scott Williams, for 40 years. So at core, Jim Lee is a cool guy. Now, maybe he doesn't speak up enough at DC when it comes to the books they put out. I don't think he cares. Jim Lee's his own brand, and I think he's more worried about Jim Lee. No.
Yeah.
That's a completely different story.
Yeah, to segue a little bit, your YouTube channel, you do a lot of Red Alert America.
Yes. So, yep. I got two channels. One is only comic book stuff, and the other one is look at our world as it burns.
So I have heard some people mention you can do playlists, so you can build one channel and do a separate playlist for that. That might be a better option instead of building two YouTube channels. But
I thought about that, but also because I was getting so much pushback, and I also had changed. At first, it was Rob Hunter art, and I was doing the Red Alert under that name, and then I changed it to a different name, and then I finally, after maybe 20 or 30 videos, I came up with Red Alert because Andy was like, he was calling it the red banner or the Red Alert channel anyways. So I'm like, I might as well just call it that.
Or you could have gone Rob Hunter, the Art of Survival.
Oh, you will see in the videos that follow how as I segue more and more away from that, just because the pushback has been, it's been without specific emails. Our comic book community, even though we should be preparing, we love our little cocoon of safety, and we don't want to think about anything else. And I thought I could help people by giving them advice. Most people don't want any advice, and they don't want to know how bad things really are. So
comics are escapism. So
yeah, that is the thing. And Andy brought that up. He goes, well, dude, he goes, one thing is you're supposed to be helping people escape from your problems, not reminding them. And I said, well, can I do both? And he goes, we will see. And now after I'm at over 100 videos, and I can see that the subscriber list has gone from 125 people to 128. So I would say that the people have voted, and they are not thrilled with Rob Hunter, the comic book artist, saying you need to buy ammo and guns. They don't like that shit at all. So I mean, I only can laugh about it. I mean, it's my wife. Honestly, I don't take that personal, because my wife doesn't want to hear it either. She says she will tell me, she's like, I like my bubble, Rob. I want to live in my own little bubble here. She goes, that's what you're for. If things go really bad, that's why I have you. That because you don't live in any bubble. She goes, but I like my bubble. I don't care what's happening in the world.
But as a team, you're supposed to work together for that.
Oh fuck no. No, we are not. No. My beautiful wife is so much smarter than I am and talented than I am. If she is left brain, I am right brain. We would make one complete, very, very smart person. I don't mind that she's completely, she's not working towards it. I say that we're working towards a future together. Mine is a horrific future. Hers is a very pleasant, everything moves on as it is future. I don't have a problem with that, because she can have the 401k and all that stuff where, if what I see in the future does not happen, we will need the 401k and things of the, I see a future where the 401k won't mean jack shit. No one's going to worry about fucking retiring in a nice retirement home versus a crooked retirement home. No one's going to make it to retirement age. That'll just be the scenario. So I don't have a problem with us working in two different directions. We're both working towards the future. So there's just one's nice bright one, and the other one's dark and hellish.
Yeah. And possibly 15-minute cities.
Oh, don't give me. Okay. I will say one thing on this live stream. We know we cannot compete with manufacturing of arms. We can't compete with Russia. We can't compete with China. So how are we going to fight a war with either of those countries?
We can't. We're having problems with our food manufacturers.
The only way we can fight China or Russia is with nukes.
Yeah.
So what if you use nukes in today's society? Even if you only use 5 of them, what's that mean for us? It means we lose our grid. We lose our grid. Most of us starve, and the 15-minute cities, because they'll just rebuild. What they'll do is they'll tack on top of the major cities. Like if New York City's get nuked, they're not going to build on New York City.
Via subscriptions for life. You can't pay your subscription for life, you're toast.
Well, first, people will starve for 6 months to a year, and any of the survivors they will be so happy to sign away. There'll be no constitution. They'll be so happy to have food in security that they're going to help build their cubicle 15-minute city prisons. They'll be excited. They're like, oh my God, I haven't had fresh water in 2 weeks, or well, they have fresh clothes, whatever it is. They're going to rush to the smart cities. They'll help build the smart cities, the survivors, and that'll be it. And all of the like, and I got emails going, but Rob, why would the rich even care to do that, anything like that, or let something like that happen? Think of all the customers they lose. And my answer to that is
automation.
There's no customers when AI takes over.
Yeah.
Because most of us won't have jobs. So who's the customer? If AI takes over, and they're saying that AI will take over 65% of jobs in America, 65% in unemployment in America, we will have no money.
Yeah.
See, this is what Marcus is yelling at me about.
Then we're just basically protein resources.
Well,
solely green.
We will live in our cubicles. The factories will be automated. Mm-hmm. We will have our rationed meals. They don't want to actually get rid of us, but they won't really need us anymore. When you go to the nice restaurants, they'll still have normal waiters, and they might actually still have chefs for the rich, but all of our food and all of our stuff will be,
paste.
It probably will be paste in cubes that were, manufactured in an automated factory and all the food was grown in an automated farm. Like, if you get to travel outside the smart city, it'll be because maybe you have a skill where they need you in the smart farm. So yeah, Marcus thinks it's funny. I'm happy Marcus lives and the bubble that he's in. So think about it. We didn't have to live through World War II the way the Europeans lived through World War II.
Yeah.
We didn't have our cities bombed. People in America do not think we will get nuked or that we will get bombed. And I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I know. I think a lot of it is after the 50s and the Cold War, they started shifting to the thought of like, oh, we're the utopia, we're going to make everything a democracy, but they just make everything worse with each leader they take out. And we're making a lot of enemies that way.
Yeah, I talked about that on my channel where, especially because as the power of the dollar decreases, the world does not need America. Each year they need America a little bit less and a little bit less. And you can see that right now with Trump saying that he's pulling out of Ukraine, which he's not. All those arms have already started back up. But they look at Europe. They're like, hey, we're going to spend $800 billion on our own defense. France is going to protect us with their nukes. We don't need America. That's how it starts. And then no one needs to use the dollar anymore for trade. So, which will put us in a whole, will lead us into the digital dollar and all of that kind of thing. But that actually, us having a future with a digital dollar, that's actually a positive compared to we lose 5 or 6 cities to nukes and we lose our grid. I brought up to Andy the other day because he likes to, every once in a while, he'll touch base with me. Like, he goes, okay, how bad is it? And I go, I never thought China would invade, and then I learned that half of China's desert. So to China, America is one big, beautiful farmland to be taken. And he goes, yeah, but we all have guns.
They're trying to take those away constantly, especially
it doesn't matter if we have guns if you EMP us. We all starve. Most of us, the government did a study. It's the EMP report 2004. 90% of Americans die in the first year. So if you're China, well, that just solved your problem. You EMP us. Maybe we retaliate with a few nukes. Well, those are acceptable casualties to China. They have 1.5 billion people. They EMP us. Most of us die. And then they just resettle North America. And now they have all the farmlands they need. And the leader of China said that their greatest resource is their people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's their greatest export. So they could, they know that the plan is, I mean, that's what they're doing with Africa right now. They're sending as a help with that, that land lease deal and building bridges and dams for Africa and highways. Well, they always have to send in their Chinese experts and Chinese workers to help. And then, they have a foothold in that country. It's even better. It's even better if America's, mostly empty.
They were kind of doing that with purchasing some of the housing and businesses in America.
That really, that's not even, I wouldn't even say that's like the cornerstone of invading. That is, we have made so many Chinese businessmen so rich. What are they going to do with their millions of dollars? Well, and dollars are really, I mean, when you think about it, we give them pieces of paper and they give us goods. Mm-hmm. So we really are making it out. We're like, look at this. Look, we give them these silly little pieces of paper and they give us all this stuff. They got to spend that money somewhere. And to them, America is a good investment. So American property is a good investment. Now, if you see, like when people are saying that the tariffs might be why the stock market's dropping right now, it's a lot of it is the rest of the world is giving up on investing in America. So they're pulling their money out, especially because they see that like, wait, why would I invest in American stocks when we know that there's an $800 billion sale of military arms in Europe to European stocks. So the European market's booming, especially, the defense contractors over there. So a lot of that money's leaving our stock market and going into their stock market.
Let's just real quick.
Yes. I would love to, but Heroes Con is like 100 and some comic book artists to compete with. And Heroes Con would probably would give me a table, but that's a long drive and that's a big expense for the hotel room and all that kind of stuff. Deth Raider is not at a point where I can travel to do cons. Even if I have a big inventory of Deth Raider, think about that. A room near a convention is $150 to $200 after taxes. So be at Heroes Con for 3 nights. That's $600. Think of how many copies of Deth Raider I have to sell just to break even. You're like, well, you could sell the artwork. Maybe I could sell the artwork, but I had all the artwork for sale in the beginning of Deth Raider 1. And I have a couple of the cool covers on the Fund My Comic for sale, and no one's bought those. So there is such a gamble to do big cons, hoping that I can at least make my money back. That's a I'm not staying at Andy's couch. I have trouble sleeping. I'm not sleeping on Andy's. Andy always offers me every year. He's like, bro, come over and you can sleep on my couch. I can't sleep on someone's couch. I have a hard enough time falling asleep in my own bed. I mean, that's really that's the basic answer to that. So
it's probably best to stick to local cons for now.
I haven't even done any local cons in a couple of years. So I like conventions and I like going to conventions to talk to people. But honestly, things have to kick over here before I expand and push out to the comic conventions. When I'm in a groove and Deth Raider actually becomes profitable, that's when I can go, okay, I can gamble on the hotel. Yeah, well, I do sleep in my own bed quite well, Marcus. It's the only luxury I have. And I take full advantage. I make sure I get my 8 hours. I work out hard when I work out, and I make sure I get those 8 hours of sleep. But yeah, if I can get Deth Raider into a groove, then I will expand out towards the conventions and, but you know, when you're running a loss on a comic book, spending $1,000 on a convention is that's silly. That's silly talk. So
Yeah.
it's just it's
And
business.
so now you look at like the nuclear radiation radar. Have you been keeping an eye on like the food recalls too?
I don't really pay too much attention to the food recalls. Um, Only if it's something major, like something I'm going to care about, like, you know, cat food and stuff.
Well,
Um,
tuna fish was recalled because of botulinum toxins in it, and there was deli meats being recalled because of listeria. But
yep, yep. I did look at some of the cans of my tuna fish, either e- either the to be honest, most of my stock of tuna fish has already gotten old. You know how you're supposed to, I always say, eat through, like you're
mhm,
supposed to cycle through it. You can say that, and I can say that, and I can tell people that, but you know, I've got like a bucket of tuna fish that's like labeled like 2022, which that gets eaten. That gets eaten when I'm, you know, hiding in a bunker somewhere or whatever, or when the grocery stores are empty. I'm, you know, usually I would like, I try to, you know, like, oh, this can of tuna fish is at least dusty. Like, you know, I'll eat this first.
mhm,
But, there's only so many, you know, the people that like literally when I see those videos where they have all their food on that perfect rotation and they've got the cans and those, you know, those little with the you take one can out and then the next one falls in place. Like it's like this cool little grocery store. Like they bought all the setup. All I can think of is, the money spent to
mhm,
be able to, you know, do that type of stuff and the time spent to do all
mhm,
that kind of stuff. Like if you have a YouTube channel that is successful where you can do that, you've literally subsidized your preparing with what your channel makes. And like with all the homestead video YouTube channels, I'm like, you motherfuckers would be penniless and have nothing without YouTube because there's no way you're making a profit without YouTube. Like their farm feeds the YouTube and the YouTube feeds the farm. When they always talk about, oh yeah, you come out to the booties and become a homesteader, I'm just like, yeah, dude, you wouldn't be paying the bills. Your electric wouldn't even be on without YouTube, you know, which obviously they made a success out of it. But when they tell other people to do that, you better already be in retirement because that type of stuff that's a 40-hour a week job on its
yeah.
own, you know, animals and gardens and stuff like that. Are you kidding me? And oh, I'm supposed to slaughter something. I'm supposed to slaughter goats and rabbits. Are you shitting me? I'm gonna have 12 new pets is what I would have. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy that's, you know, I can butcher rabbits and goats and things like that, you know.
That's when the barter system comes in and you trade your goat for butchered meat.
Oh, I don't even do that. I've got the videos. I got yelled at. One guy on Twitter calls me a looter because my real reallocation plans. Hey, the government real allocates resources all the time.
Yeah.
That's why I always talk about EMPs because the EMP is perfect. The EMP drops, it kills our grid, it kills my cell phone, it kills my watch. So within 30 seconds, I know that the country's dead. So I go real allocate resources. All I can get a hold of because everyone else is going to be sitting in their house for 3 days thinking that the power's coming back. You know, they're just going to be like, oh, I know the government's going to come and save us. I know they're not going to. So my house will be stuffed full of the local grocery store's inventory.
Mhm.
Um, And one guy goes, "Yeah, you're gonna get shot doing that." I'm like, "Who's gonna shoot me? The other guy I'm staring at, who's also filling his garbage bag full of cans? He's gonna look at me and go, "That's right, brother. You were. There's the two of us were right out of 10,000 people." Um, I've Twitter is my favorite place to read illogical comments. Or when people they yell at me about my titles to my videos, and I'm like, "Did you watch the video, or are you just yelling at me because of the title?" Usually, they're just yelling at me about the title. I like, dude, if you think I'm going to explain for 2 hours on Twitter about my video that I already spent an hour talking about, you're out of your mind. That's insane.
That's like the people that think that we're just now coming to World War III instead of that we've been in World War III since.
Or even the doom and gloom channels, because if you notice, they'll say one thing, and then if it doesn't catch on, they'll say that, like, they're saying, here comes World War III. Like, they won't even though they admitted 2 years ago, this is probably World War III, they're still going, well, because what they do is they just read the comments, and if you notice that they tailor their shows to the response they get in their comments, because it becomes a little bit of an echo chamber, but they don't care as long as if they have 150,000 subscribers, and then they have sponsors and they have Patreon. They want it to be an echo chamber because they want people to be, come to their channel for the latest whatever, and that's where all the money's made. But yeah, I know. I mean, you have North Korean soldiers in Ukraine. You have American soldiers in Ukraine. Now Europe is talking about sending 30,000 troops to Ukraine. Russia hasn't agreed to this. I love how this peace treaty keeps moving forward. Russia hasn't said yes to any of it. You're like, dude, you know that with a peace treaty, the country that's invading also has to agree for a peace treaty. And all those European leaders are running around going, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We've got French jets flying over Ukraine right now. And I'm just like, oh my God. That's why that's where the nukes are going to drop. The nukes will drop. I believe this is what the first nuke will drop either in Ukraine because of all this European bullshit, because they're just pushing forward with a peace treaty without Russia agreeing to it, or we drop the first nuke on Iran, because we can't get all of their shit is so far underground. We can't get to it with conventional weapons. We'll have to use nukes just to try to get to those missile bases.
And I love that they're trying to make a big deal of like, oh, China and Korea is in Ukraine. Well, what about all the Europeans that have been in there for months?
Well, I honestly, I think that's why Trump started sending arms. Like when he said he cut off arms to Ukraine, it lasted like 36 hours. I think that's why they immediately started sending the shipments back to Ukraine, is because when he heard that China was thinking about putting troops in with Russia for Russia's peace treaty, like the agreement that Russia would agree to would be Russian soldiers and Chinese soldiers, not European soldiers, because Russia is still worried about the first strike. And I think China's also worried about that too, because China doesn't want to lose one of their major allies. China doesn't want to go up against Europe and America all by themselves. They have no problem going up against the United States, but I don't think they want to go up against Europe and the United States all at once, because then they lose all of their customers. They don't want to lose all of their customers at once, because think about it. If you're trying to negotiate for millions of lives, if China EMPs United States and like England nukes one of China's cities, we nuke a couple of their cities in retaliation, our military does, you get to a point where you're like, unless we are planning on killing everybody, there's a stop. They're like China doesn't want to lose their European customers. They just lost all of their American customers. Like, we're all going to be within 2 weeks, where most of us are going to be starving. And Europe really won't want to go to a nuclear war with China either. Like, okay, they can literally just put their hands up and go, okay, we just lost America, and just go, and we lost. Most of those people are dead, but we can still get along, can't we? Because now they're just trying to protect the rest of the planet. And there's still South America to exploit. So and I unfortunately, I think that could be a scenario. I mean, that's not the number one scenario, but that could be like plan D when you see all the 15-minute cities and stuff like that. Like, I imagine everybody could still get along, even without them, I know they can get along really well without America. And if America is the first one, the first casualty, I think they can go, that is a tragedy. Okay. And they can move on from there and they can figure it out. Maybe they divide America up. Maybe we'll see part of Europe, because there's always ports will still be accessible if you can spend enough on security and fuel and things like that. So there's money. There'll still be money to be made in a dead America, and Europe will maybe try to get a piece of that. It'll be mostly China though. They'll just take what they need, take what they want. Maybe Russia wants maybe Russia get Alaska back. So
I think it was like when. Do you remember, or did you hear about it when it was like when Liz Truss became the Prime Minister of England for like that week, and she was saying that she had her finger on the button. I think, if I remember correctly, Putin responded by saying that all he'd have to do is drop a nuke in the ocean and England's gone.
Well, they have those torpedo nukes that would create a radioactive tsunami. Yeah. And unfortunately for England, that would be the end of England. And we are now putting nukes in England. Nukes are going back into England, which is a terrible sign. It's not a good sign. I know that there's going to be a big casualty of World War III. If we're lucky, it's just Ukraine. I mean, it's super dark. I really think that even if someone does pull the trigger and we lose America, I do think the rest of the countries they'll hammer out some kind of peace agreement, because when they, like, you'll still see in different gloom and doom channels, people will make the comments, well, we're all dead then. And it's like, that's not true. No, the whole scenario from the 80s of where we launch all of our nuclear weapons and they launch all of their nuclear weapons, that's not how it's going to work. There's no logic behind that. There's logic behind you take out a few military bases, you take out a few cities, but you leave cities intact to hold as hostage. Like, that's how you get a peace agreement going. All right, we all have to calm down, or the next city that goes, a city that gets nuked, is Los Angeles. And it, goes the same thing for whether it's China and it's Beijing or one of their major cities, or if it's, like a first strike on Moscow. We nuke Moscow and we try to get rid of most of their military leaders. Well, their nuclear submarines will retaliate and take out maybe a couple of our cities and a couple of our military bases. Everybody understands that those are the casualties of the war. And then they either move on from there, or they take out a couple more cities. And that's because the leaders will go, well, okay, the losses are now not acceptable. There's now, 30 million Americans dead, or, 30 million Russians dead. The scenario where everybody just nukes everybody, especially now that China has nukes, India has nukes, Pakistan has a few nukes, North Korea has nukes. The reason North Korea has nukes, so that if there was a first strike on China and it was very successful, so for some reason, North Korea can still nuke. North Korea can still make United States or South Korea or whoever they want have a bad day. And, that's why Belarus has nukes. That's why England has nukes. That's why we have nukes in Poland, but nobody talks about it. That one military base that we say it's a listening post, but Russia knows there's nukes there. And Poland's right next to Russia. It's everybody,
No, Belarus is Russia's insurance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you even if Moscow can't get out, well, that's the thing, is those even if factors, there's always the submarines, whether it's American submarines, British submarines, or Russian submarines. those submarines are always going to be the ones that, those will be the submarines that, those will be the nukes that do get off. And those are the nukes that will take out a few cities. And, unfortunately for us, China has been hardening their power grid for the last 10 years. That's what Biden should have done. Biden, when he was spending all the money on the DEI stuff, now it's come out from Elon Musk. The reason, like Doge finding all the billions of dollars being pissed away, it's because Biden wanted to prop up the GDP, because our GDP would have been negative under Biden, which is a really bad sign for a president. Now it's negative now with Trump. But what he did is he gave away as much money as he could and hire as many federal employees as possible so that the GDP would be positive. Because if he wanted, he should have used that money to fix our grid, but he would have needed Congress's approval. That's the unfortunate part about it, is all those billions of dollars that were wasted on nothing, on bullshit, could have been used with Congress's approval to build dams, fix waterways, harden our grid. All of that could have been used in positive ways. Unfortunately, you would have had Congress's approval, which he knew he would never get through. Plus, if you're a president, or what's easier? Like, dude, we can give a bunch of money away and it'll make us look like we're doing a good job. Or we fight with Congress saying, dude, can you imagine Biden or one of his stooges going to Congress going, well, the GDP is negative, so let's fix up our grid. Can you imagine the fighting in Congress? They would have just fought over that for 3 fucking years. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I know the whole system is fucked. So.
Yeah. It's bureaucracy. So either side's going to do their stuff to try to get money.
Well, they also know, the Republicans know that if they stall on the Democrats, if the country suffers for 4 years and it's under a Democratic rule, then the Republicans, it's easier for them to run for election. And it goes the same for Republicans. If Congress is controlled by the Republicans with a Republican president, the Democrats, the more they can stall, the worse the country is, then the easier it is for them to all get elected 4 years later. So it's a scenario that it was supposed to be for checks and balances to make our country great. And instead it makes our country do nothing. Everything is in stall mode. And, an airplane in stall mode, it just crashes. So,
yeah, that's one thing that, if you look at Russia, that they have 80 states. So there's going to be a difference in different cities. But if you look at like Moscow and St. Petersburg, there's money going in to improve the infrastructure and improves the living quality of living for their people. And that's partly because they have a president that is in more than 4 years.
Well, yeah, because he can look at the big picture. That's the positive and the negative of having like practically dictators, is if they can work on long-term plans because they know they're going to be there. Our president being president for only 4 years and then spending 2 of those years trying to get reelected, everything is temporary. Everything has to be a Band-Aid. Nobody tries to fix anything for real. Like, I hope that the things that Trump wants to do actually has a positive effect. But honestly, the only thing he's done since he got there is he made the Trump coin and made himself billions of dollars. Like the immigration thing, like I told my wife when they're like, oh, we're getting rid of all the illegals. And, like that first week, they're like, we've arrested 6,000 illegals and sent them home. Well, in 63 years, at that rate, 63 years later, you've gotten rid of the 30 million illegals. Like I crunched the numbers, the illegals problem, it's such a large problem to now trying to round up those people with using the resources we have is impossible, because they literally had the border completely opened. They were flying people in. They were busing people in. They had the border patrol were just used to organize to let people just, here's your debit card with your money, like there's no way you can. There's such a flow of people one way. There's no way you can now get all those people out. You just can't do it. You just eventually what you do is you for the press, you get rid of a few 100,000, but there's no way he can get rid of 20 million people that are already in United States. It's logistically it's not possible. And what it is you do stuff for media. So people go, yeah, get rid of those illegals. And then you quietly, you forget about it. And then you just try to absorb them into society.
The only way, if they had the resources to do it, would probably go against our constitutional rights of people going through everyone's home. And
and you need a lot more enforcement. What are you going to do? Take one out of every 4 people and say you've been drafted into the ISIS or ICE and ISIS. You're gonna draft 1 out of 4 people into ICE and say for the next 2 years your job is we're going to train you and then pull illegals out of the country. You're going to be like, wait, what? But I have a job. You're like, no, you do have a job, and your new job is ICE. It's logistically, it doesn't, it doesn't work. And honestly, they don't want it to work because remember all those different plans that they have? Well, one of those plans is automation and AI don't come online like they wanted to, and they just need cheap labor for their factories. And how about citizenship for military service? Because we're fighting China. Like nobody uses a nuke. Nobody uses a nuke in Ukraine. Nobody uses a nuke in Iran. Everybody's still afraid to use a nuke. So we have conventional wars with Russia in Ukraine. We have a conventional war with Iran, and we just try to bomb the shit out of them so it looks good. And then China takes Taiwan, and we just have a conventional war with China, and nobody uses any tactical nukes. Well, now we're trying to fight a billion and a half Chinese, so we're going to need a lot more people. Well, look at that. We just happen to have had our borders open for 4 years. So, citizenship for military service. And people go, yeah, but they can't even speak the language. For every door kicker, you need 35 support people. That's how the military works. 35 people work in factories or working in warehouses. 1 person actually kicking in the door. Now, a World War III with China, well, how about we do 50-50? So you need, for every 20 door kickers, you need 20 people in support. I'm pretty sure someone who doesn't speak the language, I think a room full of those people with 1 person who can translate, you can teach them how to run forklifts and work in a warehouse. They might have already worked in a warehouse. So you just, once you get past the language barrier, they're working in warehouses.
And then they got that new device that's supposed to go in the ear to translate.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be perfect. Here's your headphones. You're working in a warehouse. Here's your headphones for the translation. Now, sit in your forklift or whatever, and we've got to get all these military arms and food and medical supplies. We need to, fill up the trucks and fill up the C-130s. They have to go to the front line. So all of a sudden we'll be happy that all of those illegals wanted citizenship, and it's military. So, they don't, especially the first few years you're in the military, that you don't get paid jack shit. They work like 60, like they talk about, those guys go online and say that those first 2 years as a private, they're working like 16-hour days, and it's like works out to be like $1.72 an hour or something. Well, that's the perfect system for all the 20 million illegals that you let into the country. You draft most of them into the military, and they're, working warehouse gigs.
I got a question for you. So I see the cat box behind you. Is that like just a sleeping box or his litter box?
2 litter boxes. No. I will be sitting here on live stream, and someone will destroy one of those litter boxes, and it'll just sweep through my studio like a nerve gas. And I'm just like, yeah.
So your original art has the cat smell.
No, it doesn't smell that way. My original art, it's actually stored upstairs. But there's nothing glamorous about this gig. So, and I have no problem. You know, people have the perfect studios and they show off where they've, and all I can think of when I see those perfect studios is you spent, instead of drawing, you spent half your time instead of drawing, arranging your perfect studio.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's my opinion on that. I used to say the same thing at Crush It. I'd get yelled at for having a messy corner cubicle. And I go, that's because the whole time I'm here, I'm working. And I would say that to the boss, and I would just get a dirty look. So.
Yeah, you clean up when the project's done, right?
Yeah, and at Crush It, the project was never done. Then the pencil, here comes the next page. Here comes the next page. So.
Yeah, I was gonna make the joke. You get the Odie special.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Yeah. He's gonna take a shit, and then he's gonna step on it, and then he's gonna stamp every Deth Raider page so you know that there's the Odie seal of approval because you can smell it. Yeah. No.
You charge a little extra for the Odie special.
Oh, well, I might have to charge a little less for the Odie special. No one wants poo on their original art, even cat poo. No, I had
Maybe crazy cat ladies.
my first cat, Olive. She's still running around. She had surgery. You know, just she got spayed. Well, the surgery, the stitches that they used to sew her up, they didn't. They were supposed to. They were the stitches that absorb into the body. Well, they didn't absorb into the body. So for 2 weeks, while we were trying to figure out what was wrong with her, she had the orange goo, the medication stuff on her belly. There was a couple of comic book pages that had where she had jumped up on the flat bin, art bin, and gotten onto those pages when she wasn't supposed to. And there's a couple of little like, oh, oops, there's a little bit of medication smear on a couple of pages on the corner. But otherwise, I quickly learned to the art bin's right over there. So when I'm on pages that I'm actually working on, there's Odie. Hey, buddy. I quickly learned to always keep the art bin closed, the drawers closed, so that cats couldn't leave any of their own, their own marks on the artwork. So.
And do you sell your originals like Aaron does, or do you?
Oh, I sell everything. Yeah, I sell everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had on Deth Raider, one guy bought one page off of Deth Raider when it was on the Indiegogo campaign, and then after the first year, and you could see that only one backer wanted to do the artwork backing. Then it just looks a little depressing. So then I pulled all that off. I'm gonna add that back up onto Fund My Comic more. A bunch of the artwork, so that if people want some of the originals, they can grab them. But yeah, I sell everything. I don't really have much of my DC stuff left from what I've sold and what I've given away at conventions and things like that. So.
And my questions escaping me. Just gonna.
Well, are you a fan of crowdfunding in comic books, or is it manga? Because I see like there looks like there's some manga influence stuff behind you, or.
Yeah, so I have been getting more into comics. Like I've read Wraith of God, Garbage Man, a lot of Lepreste's work.
Yeah. Well, he's very talented, man. He is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Gonna dig into Cerberus eventually, reading at Horace H. Hoover. And there's a local shop that I've been stopping by, so I get comics every now and then. So this is one of the new ones I got.
Oh, that do you ever go through the quarter box in the 50-cent box?
The long boxes, yeah.
Yeah. I after the Image explosion, dude, I had like 3 comic book boxes full of where I would just go in and buy all the like Extreme Studios comics that I skipped when they were on the rack, because now I could get them for $0.25 a piece. I ended up giving all of those to a cousin of mine who was a big fan of comic books and wanted to be a comic book artist. And I just remember just like like, oh, dude, this comic book store just ate it so bad on all these books. Because if it's a $2 book, they pay mostly $1 for each of one of those books.
Yeah.
And we're talking about like there are 12 long boxes full of everything that came out during the boom of Image with Extreme Studios and Wildstorm and Marvel and DC. There's a ton of, all those books that sold like 1 million copies plus. They were all in those bins.
Yeah, like probably the manga I like are kind of the oddball ones too.
Oh yeah, I don't follow anime or manga at all. I've tried to watch a couple anime movies. They're so boring. When you give me 10 minutes talking about the city before we even see the characters, you've lost me. So
yes, so I have a few. There's one you might like because it gets right into like the action.
Yeah, like
called,
the meat of the story. Yeah.
It's called Blood Blockade Battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be a city on the edge of reality. So a rift had opened up, and so monsters and humans are living side by side.
Oh, no. What's the artwork look like, though? Because I really only like Jim Lee, Arthur Adams, Dave Finch. I'm not a fan of comic books. That's kind of true. I'm a fan of good comic books. I'm a fan of like Jim Lee, or Adams, that type of, illustrative type of artwork. I always liked John Buscema's Conan, but I don't. Most of the manga stuff, I just don't like the way it's drawn. It's like cartoons. It's silly.
Mm-hmm.
There's some serious stuff, and then there's some silly stuff.
Yeah, it does do the silly and serious stuff. That's kind of what it looks like.
Usually the covers are the best part, right? Because the black and white inside, they're faster. They draw it faster.
Well, this is anime. I haven't read the manga on that one.
Oh, that's what I've noticed. There's some of those, like for instance, when we knew CrossGen was dead, Andy and I went into a bookstore, and this is when like Barnes and Noble at the mall had the giant shelves of the manga. Yeah, exactly. And Andy and I, we both are looking through it going, we might have to learn how to draw manga now. and I'm looking at it going, dude, I can't do this stuff. It's more cartoony than it is like, comic book drawing. It's, it's cartoony. Like some of the backgrounds kick ass. But I found a book where I was like, I could do this type of style. I think there was enough illustrative, like they spend a long time on the pages. Like, okay, I can get into this. But then I was told by manga fans that was the oddball, and it's more about this, fast read, fast drawn. That's just kind of, that's the whole point of the book,
Yeah, it really depends on like which ones you get, because they're like there usually are built up of teams working on these books.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are
weekly,
longer, more
right?
drawn out story.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think some of them are like bi-monthly and stuff like that.
I know that the typical business model was one guy would do everything. He'd kill himself to get it done. If it was a big hit, then he'd immediately hire a studio.
Yeah.
So then he's just doing the story, or he's just drawing the eyeballs or something, or just the heads, and then the rest of everybody, because then the book comes out a lot more. It comes out more often.
And there's different genres too. Mm-hmm. Like there's ones that are made for adults. Mm-hmm. There's ones made for children, teens, and all that type of stuff. So like this one's a shonen. So that's really like meant for young boys. And then this one is, I think this one is a little bit higher age group, because there's a lot more gore and stuff like that in it. But it just depends. Just like American comics, we have a little bit more variety too nowadays. Yeah, so oh, actually, they recently reprinted. So I got Spawn for pretty cheap because they're reprinting the first run.
Oh, okay. That's probably smart for Todd to finally do that, not just in a hardcover form, but yeah, just kind of because Spawn is, I don't even know what issue they're on anymore. So just to
Yeah,
reprint the early stuff is probably a good idea. So,
there's a lot of spin-offs now. So there's Gunslinger Spawn, and then they just made a new series. I'm forgetting the little girl's name, but she was killed in like the 5th issue of Spawn, and they're making a series about her because she's now a supernatural being.
oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of Todd McFarlane, um, but his Spawn, because I liked how he drew cartoony faces and all
Mm-hmm.
the detail, and Spawn's face is all burned up. So I think
Yeah.
I lasted maybe to issue 11 or 12 of Spawn, and I was like, and you could tell that the artwork was getting rougher on every issue, that he was more interested in the business side and the writing and making the
Yeah.
toys. So I kind of, that's when I dipped out. I think I picked up a couple issues of when Greg Capullo and Danny Miku were really like doing super detailed work on those books. But I never really followed Spawn. You know, I was the teenager that followed all the Image guys to Image and said fuck Marvel. But you know, I stayed with some of the Image books, and then the other Image books I just skipped. So
I picked up one Gunslinger because I like the character's design, but he does kind of have.
And Brett Booth is drawing that, right?
Yeah, I believe. So. Yeah,
Yeah,
Booth.
yeah. I'm a big fan of Brett's stuff. So, but
You kind of gave him Thunder Thighs though.
yeah, with the Forge, I noticed that. Yeah, Gunslinger. I've noticed some of Gunslinger's just his proportions look a little weird depending on how super dynamic Brett's trying to be. And then with the weird hat and then the force shortening in the hat, like I'm like that looks like a character that's a pain in the ass to draw. that's immediately what I thought of. Like there's so many elements that you have to fight with just to get a cool shot going. That was just
and sometimes his hat looks more like a circus hat than
yes,
like the 10-gallon.
Yeah. The hat really changes shape depending on the foreshortening. Yeah. It can't be easy. To be honest, I don't know why he's not just drawing X-Men. He should be drawing X-Men or drawing Batman. Marvel and DC are just being ridiculous when it comes to some of their page rates, I think. I know that there's a Twitter thing up right now where Dustin Wynn was complaining about his Marvel rates and how he never sees a royalty check and stuff like that. And you're like, dude, you knew going into Marvel that you would never see a royalty check. Marvel hasn't paid. Their royalties are, for one, no foreign royalties because of a deal they signed with an Italian printer distributor, like when they were going through bankruptcy. So there'll never be any foreign royalties out of Marvel.
Yeah.
And then the way that they do their accounting, you just should assume you'll never see a royalty. I mean, I get checks from Marvel and they're like, I did see a check for like $200 and some 6 months ago. That means that they reprinted a bunch of my stuff, you know, something from X-Men or one of their Iron Man or some shit, because usually the checks are like $4, $20, $16. I'm like, oh, $16. Oh boy, I'm rich now. You know, and DC actually, they have been so inconsistent. I haven't even seen a check from DC in 8 months. And you know, usually the royalties, it's a quarter. It's every quarter. But yeah, DC's even worse about it. I guess that's what happens when your parent company is billions and billions and billions of dollars in debt. You know, nobody wants to pay royalties anymore. So,
do you need your paycheck now?
Oh, geez. Well, I'm my own boss here, so I'm telling myself that now. I look at my account and go, Well, you can't touch that money. That's printing and shipping money. Do I want to get paid this week? I'm not getting paid this week, am I? I'm like, oh man, it's CrossJet again. Damn it.
So does your wife work and bring a supplement income in, or?
Fuck yes, she does. when I started dating my wife, I made more than she did, and then it started to even out, and then like she actually switched jobs, and she goes they're closing our offices where I'm working. I go, what does that mean? And she goes technically, she goes, it means I'm getting fired. So, but they had to keep her on for a few more months. So they paid her a little extra to stay on. And I go, but you're usually the smartest person in the room. And she always smiles when I say that. And I go, so you're going to find a job right away. And she looks at me, she goes, unlike you, Rob. And I'm like, oh, come on.
Sticking the knife in and
she had her next job. When they saw her resume, they didn't even look at anybody else's fucking resume. They said, oh, she wants to work here? Fuck yeah. Versus I'm practically having a fucking, I have to fucking actually, well, I'm having to hire myself here, crowdfunding to keep working in comic books. So and she just looks at me, and when I'm having a bad day, she goes, should have gotten the medical field. And I'm like, I go, but I was doing fine. She goes, you were doing fine. And then you were doing okay. And then you were doing all right. She goes, and now you're crowdfunding your own book. She goes, and then she just kind of looks at me like, how much longer will this go on? And I'm like, and I have given her a couple, like, either things turn around or I have to go find a job. And then, well, we already passed that. Well, things I go, but I'm making so much progress. This is how many people, back Deth Raider, and we're kicking ass. And I'm like, I do show her my artwork, and she goes, oh, that's beautiful. She goes, but when does that translate into actually, because it was always, we would pay half the bills, so we split the bills.
Yeah.
And then when I came to crowdfunding, I was still paying half the bills. But as of it's pretty much this last fall into now, it doesn't really work out where every month I'm paying half the bills. So she gives me that look like, you're supposed to be paying half the bills. You're not paying half the bills. And I'm like, and I always say the same thing. I go, one of the reasons I picked Deth Raider is because it has so much merchandising potential because of the skull. There's already all this cool stuff that's already Skull's merchandise. I go, so it's not that hard to customize it beyond that for Deth Raider. And she goes, yeah, but you got to get the comic book out first, and you got to have the comic books rolling before you can do all this, a lot of the merchandising you want to do. And I go, that's the sticking point.
Yeah,
you only can do a comic book so fast when it's always if you need double, like, honestly, right from the beginning, I needed double the money that I received from crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And that's how it's always, well, you're gonna get half of what you need, Rob. Well, how the fuck am I supposed to do this with half of what I need? And then I go, I'll figure it out. And then you'll get half of what you need, like, next time you try to do something. And I'm like, well, I'll figure it out. I can do this. I'm having a lot of fun, and it's very creative, but there will come a point where my wife goes, okay, are you done with this? Have you had enough? Are you, because she sees how I do get impatient sometimes with stuff where I'm just like, come on, let's sell a few more books. And honestly, when it comes to Fund My Comic, I am impatient. I'm getting frustrated with the numbers with what I've sold so far. I don't know exactly what to do at this point. Um,
Yeah.
Besides just work on Deth Raider 2, try to do some interviews, try to make some more videos. It's obviously that putting the time into those 100 videos of the world's burning has not helped Deth Raider's sales at all. It's more or less just made people angry, I think, and a little mad at me. So
Speaking
I
of
just
Deth
keep
Raider,
pushing. Yeah, speaking of Deth Raider, yeah, all I can do is keep pushing forward, and with people's support, we're gonna keep kicking ass, and I'm gonna keep making Deth Raider books. So,
let's play
but
that trailer. Can you hear it?
I can.
So it does look like you need a new little card saying "Fund My Comic" instead of Indiegogo on that.
Well, it's just a trailer. It's a trailer on a page that's, I mean, to be honest, they would have to go to Fund My Comic to see that trailer. I know they can
True.
see it on my YouTube anyways. No, I know. Some of that stuff needs to be updated. Um, all of it will be, obviously, when Deth Raider 2 comes out. I haven't decided if I'm going to, well, honestly, I mean, Deth Raider 1, even though it took 2 years, made a lot more on Indiegogo than Fund My Comic has done with Deth Raider. I mean, part of it is everyone bought it. Everybody who saw it that liked it bought it on Indiegogo. So Deth Raider 2 will hit on Indiegogo first, and then we'll go from there. We'll see. We'll see how things are going. I'm still having a lot of fun. I'm super excited to release. I'm excited for people to get their hands on Deth Raider 1. And then I'm already thinking past that with Deth Raider 2. Probably I have to admit, I've changed what I want to do with Deth Raider 3 about 3 times with the plot, just because I've changed the plot a little bit as I worked on Deth Raider 2. I have.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to just say that I have plans on doing a Psy one issue. Just it's Psy's Big Las Vegas Adventure or some shit. I haven't nailed down the title yet, but it's going to be a one with nudity in it because I heard nudity sells on Kickstarter. So I'm trying to do everything. And really, I'm trying to figure out what the fans actually want. Because 32K after 2 years, that doesn't tell me what the fans want. That tells me just being 2 years of selling the same book on Kings eventually gets to 32K is all it says. But I really need to figure out what the fans want and what they want from me so that I can go, here's Deth Raider 2. It hits 20 grand in the first couple weeks. We're rolling and I can make plans from there. If Deth Raider 2, if it takes 6 months to hit 20 grand, then, I've already put my application in with a bunch of other stuff. And we won't see Deth Raider 3 just because I'll be like, I guess that's not, Deth Raider isn't what people want. So I look at really, if I look at Deth Raider 1, we look at by the time what Deth Raider was at after the first 60 days when it went in demand. And that campaign is only 15K. So that's a big difference. That really shows you the initial push, what fans initially want, and not fans that come across it later. because you can't base a campaign or plans. You can't really make plans. You have to make plans from what the campaign does in the first 60 days. You can't really make plans on what a campaign might do after a year and a half, because the money's not enough. The money comes in so slowly that yes, it does come into the bank account, but it's not enough to. What it ends up doing is it just pays for some expenses. It doesn't really pay for the next project, or making plans for this stuff. And what it does is it really just keeps the project on life support to exist. So, and I think that's when people were always talking to me, hey, is Deth Raider 1 going in demand? And I'm like, well, it's my first book, so I knew it needed to go in demand. But as I've seen the lifespan of what in demand means for a project, really the project needs to hit its numbers. It needs to hit a good number in those first 60 days, because in demand is, that really is life support, unless it's a huge project.
Yeah.
Um,
And how much work do you have done before you launched Deth Raider?
I had, when I launched the first Deth Raider, I had 10 pages done. When I had Jimmy do the trailer for Deth Raider, that was all the artwork I had finished. I had a lot of pages that were half finished, and he just took the pages that were obviously finished and he made a trailer out of it. So there was only like 4 or 5 actual, maybe 6 total pages finished. And I didn't even, in Deth Raider 1, there's a big shot with, chain link fence and Deth Raider facing off against the, one of the alien robots. That didn't even make it into the book. I had, by the time I was knee deep into Deth Raider 1, I had already pulled that page, because it was really cool for the trailer, and it looked really cool when I worked on it, but it became too much of the same thing for that sequence where he's fighting the robots in the alleyway, where that sequence didn't need a big double page spread of them, just like a Mexican standoff type of stuff. Like, are you going first? Am I going first? Who's gonna punch first? It looked
one
cool
thing
in the
is
trailer.
Finding the rhythm of the pages, working out.
Exactly. And when I first did Deth Raider, I purposely, because it was my first story, I left it open so that I could. I wrote the scenes, but I didn't write like a strict page count. I wrote an outline with scene descriptions, and I left it so if I wanted to expand, like, these pages are really coming across really well, but if I want to be able to explain this as far as I have to, I need 6 pages, not 3 pages. And then there's other scenes where I gave it 4 or 5 pages and I only needed 2. So that was something that I purposely knew I would, being my first time, I would have to adapt. So I shrunk some stuff, I compacted other scenes, or expanded other scenes. So
yeah, I'm in that phase of my story. A lot of layouts.
yeah, it's the layouts are the thinking part, but that's where you can figure out, because the layouts tell you, well, what needs to happen on this page. And sometimes the layouts will tell you, like, I can't tell what I need to say. I can't say in these 6 panels. Like, you'll look at it, go, it needs 2 pages. Or you're like, oh shit, I just explained what I needed to explain in 2 panels, or one big splash. Like Todd McFarlane used to say that all the time. He said the writer would need 8 panels to explain it, and he would read those 8 panels and go, oh, I could do it with a splash page. And that's why he would make a splash page, because he's like, why the whole scene that you're trying to explain, I explained in a splash page. So
I actually had some of my portfolio pieces from like comic projects I did for school reviewed by Todd McFarlane on his Discord.
Nice. Did he tell you when in doubt, fade it out?
Yeah, well, he told me about the 1-inch rule, where you do for inking, you cut out a 1-inch square, and you're supposed to hold it over your page, and if all your inks look the same, then you need to work on your textures.
I've never heard that
And,
before. That's interesting, though. You can
yeah,
see that a lot of inkers never learned that,
yeah, and
especially today and with computer inking. None of them
yeah,
learned that. All the computer inking looks all the same.
yeah. I'm trying to learn inking, but some of it's just
Well,
this is like a rushing.
if you really want to do your own projects, learn to ink. If
Yeah,
it's just about being a comic book artist and pencils, just work on your pencils. Because here's the
uh,
thing, when it comes to penciling, you can become an illustrator, you can become a storyboarder.
mhm.
That if you can draw well and you can draw fast, the world will open up to you. Learning how to be a good inker doesn't get you anything unless you want to do your own projects.
Yeah, I want to do my own projects. I got a lot of ideas that I want to eventually create and tell. I'm starting with my dark fantasy, which is it's kind of an epic adventure.
That's
Follows a
cool.
character
That's cool.
that thinks he's cursed.
Did you start with an outline?
Yes.
That's good. Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah.
wife was always yelling at me when I was working at Deth Raider. Where's your outline? Where's your outline? I'm like, it's right here. And then she'd yell at me and go, well, did you plot it out? And I go, I plotted out the scenes that I'm working on right now. She's like, well, what about the rest of it? What's happening? How many pages? You know, like she was always on my ass about that. And I'm like, I go, well, no, I actually haven't figured out the ending yet. She's like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like,
I have an idea for the ending, but I'm gonna rewrite it here in a little bit and see if it still holds water.
I think that's the best way because Mike Barron tells me this all the time. He says you will get to a point with the characters that you've created where they will start writing the scenarios for you because you've set them up that they will do this depending on, that. You put them in a moment of crisis, they're going to do this. If you put them in a moment of where it's serious, maybe one of your characters will make a joke because that's what your characters do. And then the other person will, be mean or whatever. So that's helpful for, especially as you work on your story and the ending, because honestly, I leave my endings, I leave them where I have an idea for the ending, but I leave those endings completely open and go, here, I have 4 different ideas for the ending. We'll see what feels the best when I get to the end of the book. And I think I think a lot of people, especially comic book writers, when they're writing for Marvel and DC, the worst part of the book, their stories are the endings. And it's because they have to just write it and turn it into the editor. And I imagine a lot of those guys, if they could, they would love to have been able to rewrite their ending, but they've already turned it in. They don't want to go through that whole editorial mess. They definitely don't want pages redrawn. So
yeah, this is one of the characters in the book too.
Very cool.
I'm working on.
Nice.
It's a light spirit, so not going the traditional fantasy.
Is it like a fairy or?
So, in my story is that world's version of a star. So there'll be different ones based off like the rays of light, and when it's during the day, they sleep and they become the sun.
Oh, okay, that's cool. That's an interesting. Well, you need a foundation, and it sounds like you came up with a pretty cool foundation for the book, the story, and the logic of the story and how it's going to work. So that's very cool.
So part of it, it's like the fantasy element's going to be like spirits of nature, and then there's going to be some that are based on human emotions, negative human emotions. So.
My stuff, it's always rage. Anytime it's all rage. It's all how angry will these characters get. So jokes and rage. So
one of the characters is made up of those like 3 different parts. So there's like the light spirit half, but then he's been infected with like the emotion side. So like part of it is hatred. So there's a little bit of rage.
There you go. Well, we have and it's mostly been me ranting but we're on 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So I definitely need to get some work done today. But
Oh,
it's been a pleasure. And
yeah.
I think we scared Marcus away when we started
Yeah.
talking about
Doom and gloom.
yeah. Yeah.
A little politics too.
Yeah, I've learned that scares away most comic book people, which is not a good way to sell a comic book. So
I guess it's time to pitch my book that I got published on Amazon.
there you go. Exactly. No, wait, no. You got to be. It's strictly flowers and rainbows and unicorns. Pitch your comic book, then go back to flower. Like I'm gonna literally, I'm gonna start doing a video series where I take the comic book news of the day and put the most flowery, bullshitty spin on it and say how great it is, and then I'll pitch my comic book. And that'll be it. And people are like, Rob, this is not you. And I'm like, I'm fucking dude. I just want to be able to pay the mortgage next month. I don't care about the truth anymore. I told you guys the truth for 100 videos and it pissed you off. So now I'll just fucking lie to you and pitch my comic book. Everything's great.
You could probably talk about like some of the books Ghost Machine's putting out, like the Hyde Street.
I would actually have to buy them. I see. I'm not buying comic books. Deth Raider will have to be profitable before I actually buy a comic book. Andy yells at me all the time because I haven't bought his book yet, and he bought Deth Raider. And I told him, I go, as soon as Deth Raider is profitable, Andy, I go, I'll be buying your book. And he's like, you son of a bitch. So
friend discount, or you could go dinged or dented version.
Well, that's what Andy says. He goes, next time, he goes, I'm getting the PDF. I go, why do you think I'm going to sell a PDF next time around, Andy? He goes, I know you. You're going to try to sell a PDF and you're going to try to expand your customer base. He goes, you keep thinking big picture. He goes, remember, you got to pay your bills first, Rob. That's what he reminds me of all the time. He goes, remember, when you think of big picture, you got to pay your bills first. Then you can think of expanding your market and your customer base.
Well, that's partly why I do the interviews, is to try to build an audience. And I haven't decided if I'll do, when I go to publish mine, if I'll start with like a web comic and try to build interest that way before going to print, or try going to print. And you got to figure out distribution.
Well, I think your distribution in the next 2 years will handle itself. It'll be non-existent. It'll be Amazon, and that's it. Amazon,
or walk in the streets, buy my comic.
Yeah, it'll be Amazon giving it away for free. Crowdfunding. That'll be your distribution. Man, I can't see, especially after the year coming up, I can't see comic book stores. Any comic book store that's still alive is not selling many comic books. Honestly, they're selling a lot of toys and they're selling a lot of other stuff. So we'll just see more of that. And
and the one in where I live has a lot of playing cards, like the Magic the Gathering and stuff like that.
Or they sell a lot of old comics, right? A lot of back issues. Comic book stores are. It's funny. For the longest time, it was all about the new sales. Well, new sales are so awful now. There's still people who love comic books. I mean, you can see that on YouTube. The X-Men comic books don't sell 1 million copies, but the YouTuber is getting 1 million views talking about the X-Men comic that doesn't sell 1 million copies. You're like, how the fuck does that work?
And how can you get in on the audience?
I know exactly. Well, like, this guy's got a massive audience. Why isn't he selling my Deth Raider on this? You fucking cocksucker. Those guys never email. They never email because they've got people emailing them constantly. I mean, they have 2 million subscribers. If they're selling anything, they're selling $30,000 sponsor ads. They're like, "Well, Rob, we could talk," and then they go to my Indiegogo and see, oh, it took him 2 years to crowdfund 32K. Yeah, I'm not having a conversation with this guy. It's not worth the 5 minutes for him to tell me no. So, it's the nature of the business.
Yeah.
But good luck on your stuff.
Thank you. Good luck on yours.
Hopefully, the next time we talk, there's more of it completed, so you're moving forward and a linear progress. I just need someone to call me up and just buy Deth Raider from me at this point, I think, and just say, here, Rob, I'm going to just give you a check. And I'll be like, okay, that's awesome. Thanks. No, obviously, Deth Raider 2 will be coming out. The Deth Raider 1 is at the printers. So I'll be shipping that to everybody who bought a copy. And hopefully people are going to see this and go, boy, that guy's a mess. I got to get myself a Deth Raider 1 off of Fund My Comic. So,
Well, supposedly there's sites where you can go and beg rich people for money.
oh my God. Wait, no, they shut those down. It's called USAID. Man, if I knew that they were just giving money out to anybody just to try to keep the GDP positive, I would have been like, I'll be like, we got this DEI comic book company. There's no comic book companies. We're literally, I'm going to call it DEI. It won't be DEI at all. And I'm like, we just need $50 million. And they're like, well, how fast can we sign this check over to you, Rob? And I'm like, oh, fantastic. I would come home and tell my wife, we're moving out of the country. We're not doing anything. We're taking this 50 million and we're disappearing. Because if people start looking into the books of how we publish DEI comics that aren't DEI comics, they're going to be upset. And I definitely would not spend $50 million in a comic book company. Are you crazy? You spend $50 million to make 5. Is what I've learned when it comes to comic books. So I take that 50 million and I would just put out Deth Raider. They're like, how's this DEI, Rob? I'm like, well, he's missing his legs. He's handicapped. That cost us 50 million. I'm like, yeah, cost you 50 million. Now I'm on a beach somewhere, just working on my tan. I mean, because as you can tell, I really need to work on my tan. So
same.
I need that 50 million. I need that 50 million to work on my tan. Yeah.
But I don't like the summertime because it ruins my pale complexion.
Well, my wife, don't say pale. You have to use better words than pale. My wife has the same complexion as you. You say alabaster. So you use your alabaster complexion and you can tan, but mostly it's burn. So you just have to be extra careful out in the sun. That's what she does too. Because she loves getting a little bit of a tan. She's so excited when she's not completely alabaster. And she yells at me when I'm out there for 2 hours and I get a tan.
I only get like the farmer tan from like driving.
Oh, she works during the summer. She works hard trying to get that tan. Her and her friends will run to the beach and stuff. So, you know.
So it looks like a fish. Like one side will be like all brown, and then the underside is pale.
Oh, that's terrible. All right. Well, have a fantastic week. I am gonna say goodbye, and I'm gonna retool my whole YouTubing because I can see how it's a giant wreck. And have a great week.
Oh, well, you have a good one too. Thank you for stopping by. You're always welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.